Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Sunday Talk within the Nine-Sided Circle. I'm one of your two hosts, Noor Kyle.
And I am two of your two hosts, Mushtaq Ali.
There you go. Thank you for joining us, whether you're here live or watching on the replay. We are so happy to have you here with us. And yeah, so YouTube spiel, briefly. We've been getting some really awesome, thoughtful comments lately. I love that. And please keep them coming. We will do our best to respond with, even marginally equal interestingness, hopefully. But thank you for that. And you can also help us out by subscribing to our channel and sharing our content elsewhere. And of course, liking our videos helps a lot too. That does give us a good amount of support when it comes to making YouTube work for a tiny little channel like this one. So,
And
and
if we get enough subscribers and comments this week, we will do a video, probably not a Sunday Talk video, but we will do a video where we read for you our hate mail.
oh my God.
I've been thinking about that lately. Some of it is so good. It would be, I would love to read some of the hate mail.
That sounds like a good time. We've had some interesting ones over the years, I guess. Some I'd rather not revisit, but hey,
Oh, I love them all.
yeah, stuff to depths to aspire to, huh?
Yeah.
Yes. So, anything else we need to add, Mushtaq?
Um, well, we've got like our video, subscribe to our channel, leave a comment. We both have openings right now for private sessions. Check it out. The best way to do the work is one-on-one. And so we have made that possible.
Yeah. So email us for more details on that.
And have fun and pray for Israel and Palestine and for
Amen.
people not being killed.
Yes. So, on that note, given that many of us are going to feel quote unquote anxiety in response to much of the goings on of the day, yes.
Probably so. Yeah. Timelier
We,
than I would like it to be.
what's that?
I said this topic is timelier than I would like it to be.
Yes. Yes, yes. So, we are going to be discussing anxiety and the work.
And this is part one of a two-part talk. We're going to address it in general this week and do the Enneagrams of anxiety next week. I say Enneagrams because there are going to be two of them.
Hmm.
One is how you do anxiety, and the other is going to be how you get out of anxiety. Very related.
In considering how broad uh you know people understand themselves, the scope of people who would describe themselves as experiencing anxiety is, this is a topic for just about everybody, isn't it?
Pretty much.
Yeah. So where should we begin?
What is anxiety? This question is not rhetorical. I'm interested in what y'all have to say about this. What is anxiety?
Fear without a specific object.
Oftentimes, yes.
It's like an urgency to do something right now.
Mm,
Yeah.
an urgency that can't be discharged in its natural setting. Like you can run away from the tiger, but you can't run away from your mortgage.
Mm-hmm. These are all good.
These are all good. And if we kept this up, we would begin to notice that there are general classifications going on here. Like, you can't run away from your mortgage. What would that generally be? Anxiety around survival. Oh my God, I'm going to lose my house.
Yep.
Anxiety around, I need to do something. I don't even know what it is, but I got to do it. Right? That's different than survival stuff. Generalized fear, that's also different. So we're going to say, for the sake of this talk, that there are actually two kinds of anxiety. There is what I like to call the anxiety of the machine. This is what my professor used to call neurotic anxiety. Psychological crud that you carry around with yourself and beat yourself over the head with over and over and over. Probably everybody here recognizes that to some extent or another. And then there's what we call anxiety of essence, what my professor used to call existential anxiety. This is the anxiety that is produced when you are not living your meaning, when you are not confronting the deep questions of your soul. And these are two completely different things. The anxiety of the machine is what mostly people deal with. That's what modern psychiatry deals with. You know, you come in and go, oh my God, I'm afraid that I'm not going to be able to survive in this world. And the psychiatrist goes, here, take these pills. It'll all be fine, right? Or you do talk therapy. Or finally, somebody says to you, hey, breathe like this. Let your mind be quiet. And it settles down. I don't want to diminish the anxiety of the machine because it can be crippling. But it's a different kind of crippling than the anxiety of essence. The anxiety of essence is looking and going, oh my God, where is my meaning? Nothing matters. Or, oh my God, I'm going to die. That's another one. Can anybody think of any of the other possibilities for anxiety of essence?
Spiritual homesickness, even if it doesn't come in terms of like absence of specific meaning, just the general sense of not being connected to something broader.
That's
like
brilliant. Yes.
Yeah, feeling like an isolated little unit.
Yep.
And not plugged in.
That will produce a lot of anxiety of essence.
I've also noticed some subconscious anxiety. It's like in the back of the head. So I don't know if it's of the essence or of the machine.
It would depend on the content.
Okay.
Yeah. So that could be either. A lot of anxiety is subliminal. It's just beneath the surface, so you don't even know why. And the first thing you need to do is determine, is this anxiety of the machine, or is it of the essence?
Right.
And so that requires a certain amount of self-inquiry. We are interested in anxiety of the essence. That's one of the things that we deal with. There's a lot of people who do really good jobs of dealing with the anxiety of the machine, helping you deprogram yourself from all of the accumulated crap that life hands you. We don't do that so much. We can recommend those people to you, but that's not our bag. We are interested in the anxieties of essence, the anxieties of meaning, the anxieties of connection, the anxieties of life and death and nihilism and time and all of these things that ask the really deep questions. Which is not to say, where the hell am I going to get my rent isn't a deep question. But it's a different kind of question to, where the hell is God and why aren't we talking?
Yeah.
Does this make sense so far?
Yeah. Everyone
Oh,
is
yeah.
nodding. Yeah.
What do you think, Noor?
What do I think?
What do you think? Talk to us.
I think it can be easy to confuse the two, or for one to spill into the other. And that's why it's important to give yourself time to feel through it instead of jumping to conclusions. And another thing I've noticed is that these things can be contagious, right? When we have people around us who are feeling anxious for one reason or another, we can pick up on that. And again, it becomes a situation in which we need to determine whether it's something that we ourselves are needing to dig into and figure out, or do we need to make sure that we are, there may be a place for compassion for other people's anxiety, but we don't necessarily want to take it on for ourselves. And I think this can happen with people that we're close to. So that's another aspect to this as well.
And there are people who will invite you into their anxieties.
Yeah. Or why don't you feel this with me? There's something wrong if you don't carry this as heavily as I do. Yeah. Khalil.
So, yeah, as you begin to expound on this topic, which is very interesting to me, I'm hoping that you'll probably maybe go into the differences between what I would call probably very acute and extreme responses, which are often confusing and ambiguous. For example, I am sometimes, I don't know how to react to the horror of the world, such that I don't know whether to be anxious, to scream, to laugh, to cry and weep. And sometimes I'll have a breakdown where I'll just break down into a fit of both tears and laughter. But I know most of the time, probably I bottle it up with anxiety, especially because I'm Enneagram 5. So I have a tendency to not be able to express my emotions in, I don't know, maybe the appropriate way or whatever. But when it does come out, when you do open up the fire hose, you can't stop it. And I don't know. Sometimes I'll just scream at the top of my lungs. I love the songs best, for example, Pink Floyd songs, where they say things like, should we shout or should we scream, right? Or should we laugh or should we cry? The response to the absolute horrific horror of what's going around is just too much to handle sometimes.
Yeah, and that would fall under the category of anxiety of essence. That's not
But like, why are the responses so different? There must be some specific meaning to why we respond one way or another, whether with laughter, tears, screaming, or anxiety.
That will matter. That will touch on how do you constitute meaning out of this? Can you constitute meaning out of it first? And second, when you do, what is the meaning that you derive from it? If the meaning that you derive from the horror of the situation is fear, you scream. If it is disgust, you recoil. If it is compassion, then you embrace it.
So is the fact that I don't know how to respond, the fact that I don't know how to process the meaning of it?
Yeah,
so I don't know what, okay.
There's your work.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds very existential to me
Yeah.
in and of itself. Yeah.
So it's good that you're becoming a philosopher.
Yes.
My professor used to say, most people are not psychologically broken. They are merely philosophically ignorant. And I think there's a lot of truth in that. And Bonnie has a question.
Bonnie has a question. And then after that, we'll speak with Osama. Go for it, Bonnie.
Right. So in regards to what Khalil just said, so I've had this anxiety since birth, I guess, because I remember at a very early age thinking to myself that what is happening? And just that question about what is happening, it just made me feel so anxious, like I don't fit in, or what do I do? Where do I go? What is happening? What is happening? Just this question, this constant nudging. What is happening? So what would that be?
Oh, that's almost undoubtedly anxiety of essence, because that's the question that essence asks. What's happening? What's true? What can I know?
Yeah.
What is reality? All of those questions. That's what essence wants to know. The machine doesn't care anything about those kind of questions. The machine cares about, where's my food? Who's going to hurt me? You know, things like that.
Right. And this can be present since birth?
Probably. Why not? I don't know. It can be present for as far back as you can remember. It's one of the big questions.
All right.
And it's a question that in order for you to find your own growth, it would behoove you to answer that question. What's going on? I don't know. You want to find out? Yes. How are you going to do that? I don't know. Well, first, breathe, center yourself, pay attention to your own being. Become quiet inside and observe. Things like that. Does that make sense?
It does.
Good. We will come back to this. Osama.
Hello. It is very interesting that talking about anxiety brings about anxiety.
I
Funny how that works.
Contagion. Yes.
So on that topic, having it being contagious, because I was in Jordan for 2 weeks, waking up in the morning, first thing, put on the TV, and you're watching news. This many people died. This happened. This person's cheating. Corruption here. Da 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 da. And it's on 24/7. It's on. there's a constant level. I was talking to my friend earlier today, and I was telling her that there's a constant level of this anxiety that's just creating this sharpness, this tension in the air constantly. And it's almost as if it's, for me, it was such a challenge to to kind of guard this inner sanctuary that's away from that sharpness, that tension out there. And it does pull you in.
Yeah.
It pulls. And it's very interesting that in that space, that space can be here too, right? The reason why I don't feel it here is because I don't watch the news, I don't, watch TV or any of that stuff. But it's probably, it can be felt here.
Like it is there.
Yeah. The thing is that level, now that you made the distinction of the mechanic, the machine anxiety, and the essence anxiety, is that I can see how the essence anxiety is definitely not looked at, it's overlooked, it's not dealt with, because there's so much of that mechanical machine anxiety, and then religion comes in. So when the question that comes up, who am I? People don't have the luxury to ask that question of who am I. So then they would rely on answers that are already given from religion or books or philosophy or whatever it is. Here, this is your answer. Don't worry about that question. Worry about this machine anxiety. And to experience that for the past 2 weeks, I can't imagine being in that anxiety for, like, I still feel the effects of it now.
Yeah.
So I love that you make that distinction, and the fact that it's contagious, because I definitely believe that to be true for sure from that trip that I just took.
Yeah. The thing about the anxiety of the machine is that it can be used as a mechanism of control. If you want to control a populace, keep them anxious. Give them something to be afraid of. Keep the level of anxiety just below the surface. If it gets above the surface, then you get things like violence going on in the streets. And you don't want that, because that's bad for a business. So you want that anxiety that is just below the surface. And it's always, hey, them foreigners are coming to take your jobs, right? That's something that is designed to provoke the anxiety of the machine. Taking your jobs. I'm not going to be able to work because these foreigners are coming to take my jobs. If you were able to think rationally, you would realize that that's bullshit, because they're coming to do the jobs that you think you're too good to do. 20 years ago, the American Farm Workers Union created a program called Take My Job, Please, where they offered to take any American citizen and give them a job harvesting on farms all over the country. In the entire time that program has been active, and I believe it's still active, only 2 applications were received. Let me repeat that. Only 2 applications for jobs that will actually pay you probably more than working at McDonald's. But we don't want to do that. There's a reason. Well, here on the West Coast, you look outside and everybody who's doing yard work is Latino. back in Michigan, everybody who did yard work was gay. Go figure. It's weird. My partner back then said, "We got to get a lesbian." I looked at her and said, "What?"
The tree needs trimming.
But yeah, that's what she explained to me, that the lesbian women of Grand Rapids absolutely controlled the yard work scene,
Landscaping, all that stuff.
landscaping. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was true. We got a lesbian. She did a great job. Here we have a couple of Mexican guys who come and they do a great job. And I'm glad they do, because I don't want to do it. It's hard work. But
Thank you, landlady.
yes.
Yes.
Yeah, but I don't see no white guys coming up and going, "Hey, I want to do your yard work. And I'll do it for whatever they're charging you." So that anxiety is not based in reality, and yet it is used to control the masses. Next thing you know, it's going to be lesbian Latinos are coming to take our jobs.
Yep. Lesbian Latinas. All right. So another thought I had is that, yes, we have a question or a thought. Go for it.
So, wouldn't the anxiety of essence, that existential anxiety, also be a tool of control through other kinds of institutions, such as religious institutions?
Only in the sense that religious institutions tend to try and tell you what the truth is rather than letting you discover it yourself.
They give you an answer, quote unquote, right?
Yes. I think that is the biggest problem with institutions trying to control you through that. Mostly they try and control you by keeping your mind off that. If you go to a Christian church around here today, a lot of them are going to talk more about abortion than they are to talk about your relationship to God. They're going to talk about needing your money. They're going to talk about all of these things that do not have to do with questions of meaning.
Yeah, and Hollywood says to threaten eternity in hell is pretty damn big mechanism of control, it seems to me.
Yeah. But again, that's the anxiety of the machine. Oh my God, if I do the wrong things, I'm going to burn in hell.
Or
So threats of hell would just then be the anxiety of the machine stretched to an eternal dimension.
Yeah.
Not
yeah,
okay,
I would say
right.
so, because I mean it's about
I have never met an awakened human being that had a fear of hell. Can't think of a single one.
why do you think that is?
Because hell is just a mechanism of control.
Or maybe because hell is supposed to wake you up. And if you're already awake, you're not afraid of it. You've done it.
Maybe. But I see the churches using it as control, not to wake you up. No church that I've ever experienced wanted you to wake up.
No, I'm meaning more like metaphysically. I believe there's a thing like hell or whatever it is. And the point is for people who are still asleep to kind of kick them in the ass and wake up. If you've already been woken up, that threat is not going to have any purchase on your soul. It's like, well, I've done that. What good is that going to do, right?
Yeah, something like that. That works. So, dealing with the anxiety of the machine is simple, not easy, but simple if you understand the distinction. The techniques of dealing with the anxiety of the machine are pretty well understood. And basically, you have to get yourself to move from basically, you have to do a nervous switch. You got to move from sympathetic to parasympathetic nervous system, or vice versa. I always get those two mixed up. From fight or flight to feed and rest.
There you go. Yeah, I think that that'll help people grasp it better, whether they know the vocabulary or not. So,
Yeah. And the anxiety of the machine is bad for the machine. It's like running a car without enough oil in the crankcase.
that is what I wanted to return to. This idea that anxiety of the machine is a draining kind of anxiety. It is, we've talked about the need to maintain a certain level of energy to progress in the work, right? And one way that that falls apart is when we get stuck in the trap of the anxiety of the machine. I think of it as a leak, and addressing that anxiety is one of the areas in which we need to plug those energy leaks.
This is absolute truth.
And sometimes it's really, as we were saying earlier, it's a matter of teasing apart the two, and it's almost like it dawns on you that really all the things that occupy you and take up your energy are things that don't really matter, and then your focus becomes the anxiety of existential stuff, the big questions, the things that drive you forward and keep you searching and keep you motivated to build your own meaning, right? That's an ongoing thing. But where was I going with that? The anxiety of the machine really depends on how habituated you become in it. Like, have you, and I have experience with this, have you made basically a garment out of it, a way of allowing yourself to be identifiable is by allowing the anxiety to essentially permeate your image of yourself. This is the anxiety of the machine I'm referring to. And the deeper that gets into you, the more intentional you have to be about challenging it. That's my experience. What do you think, Mushtak?
I think that that's absolutely correct.
I have a question.
Yes.
Yeah.
In regards to what you just shared, Noor. So if dealing with both anxieties, so okay, let's say I have both anxieties, the anxiety of the machine, the anxiety of the essence. I gotta deal with them. Is discerning or being able to categorize which one is which is that a necessary process if at the end of the day I must deal with it? So do I need to know that, oh, this anxiety is anxiety of the essence, it's anxiety of the machine? Would that change how I'm dealing with it?
It might.
I would say it can. It might, it can, yes.
Yeah. The thing is, you have to deal with the anxiety of the machine first. The anxiety of the machine is so much stronger than the anxiety of essence that it will drown out the anxiety of essence until you get it quieted down.
Because there tends to be something subtle about the anxiety of essence. It's typically you're not having panic attacks over it, like you might be over the anxiety of the machine.
And if you do have a panic attack, it's going to be of a different quality.
Yeah, I mean, I've had
It's
both. So existential panic attacks, not fun either, but they are certainly different, yes.
think Maslow's hierarchy, right? The first few levels of Maslow's hierarchy deal with the anxiety of the machine. And if you don't take care of that, you never get to the higher things. So self-actualization, that's where you find the anxieties of essence. Taking care of your physical needs, that's where you find the anxieties of the machine. And meaning, the meaning of anxiety of essence is going to be of an entirely different class. We're going to look at that a lot next week. We're going to focus in on anxiety of essence because, I mean, that's what we're interested in here, right? We're not interested in, oh my God, I feel like I can't pay the rent. We're interested in, oh my God, I feel like I have no connection with the divine reality. Or, oh my God, I don't know what's true. Those sorts of things.
I saw Osama unmuted, and then I see Khalil had his hand up.
Yeah, for when you shared about the hierarchy, Maslow's hierarchy, for some reason, I can understand it. That okay, I got to deal with this in order to get to that, and it makes sense. However, there's this little thing that says it just doesn't have to be linear for some reason. There's this, yeah, I can be homeless, da 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 da, and then sit down and wonder at night, who am I? Like, there's this non-linear thing that.
Yeah, and you're not wrong. You can do that. But, you know, the people who do that probably don't think of themselves as homeless. Just a thought.
Khalil and then Yusuf.
So I'm still not quite clear on whether the anxiety over the state of the world is existential or the machine. I mean,
Depends on how you formulate it.
Okay, so it's kind of a two-part question. So like, I mean, my feeling is more like it's not so much like a dread or an anxiety. It's more of like this weird, uncanny feeling that we've entered some other weird dimension of reality. It's like this kind of surreal freakishness. It's not an anxiety. It's like what the hell? We've dropped into Alice in Wonderland. Nothing is like real. Nothing, but it doesn't really cause anxiety. It just kind of causes kind of a like an uncanny. I think it's closer to something like starts nausea, just like a disbalance and a disequilibrium, I guess.
Yeah, it could very well be. Yeah, and I think that people are going to manifest differently. For me, I'm like one of the least anxious people I know. Drives Nor crazy sometimes.
Honestly, it does drive me a little crazy.
But it doesn't mean that I don't experience anxiety, especially now. I look at the world and I go, frequently, what do I have to do to keep Nor safe? How do I make sure she's protected? There's where you're going to find an area of anxiety for me.
Which in that manifestation also drives me a little crazy sometimes. But it comes from a place of love. Yes. Yeah. I mean, there's also the thought that we how do I want to put this? Because I don't want to make any assumptions about what you've described, Khalil, but I also know that sometimes people we're using anxiety in a pretty broad way too. And I think that there can be a denial of the experience of anxiety because it manifests in so many different ways that can be unique to individuals. And I am certainly not saying that's true for you, but I'm sure for some out there it is true. And so I would explore without overanalyzing to the point of getting lost in it to the point where it's defeating the purpose, but in what ways are we denying that we have these existential anxieties? That's another thing to think about.
Yep. Yeah, the denial of existential anxiety is probably the most dangerous thing you can do. So, Yusuf, you have a question and you're waiting so patiently.
Can we say that the anxiety of the machine is the anxiety of future, and the anxiety of the essence is the anxiety of now? Or I feel like the anxiety of the essence has doesn't have this time concept, or doesn't have to do something with time.
That's a really interesting point. And I hadn't considered it in those exact terms. So I think that they're worth thinking about. I suspect that the anxiety of the machine is definitely about the future, but probably also to some extent about the past. For those people who create anxieties for themselves by rehashing past events over and over and over again in their minds. But anxiety of the essence, in my experience, seems to be in the now.
Or like a kind of a timeless quality to some extent. Yeah.
Bonnie, lay it on us.
Hi. So regarding the denial of the existential anxiety, what are we supposed to do? Because it seems easier to follow the crowd than having to address something that you don't know how to address. So what to do about that? I mean, how do we address this without denying? without being in denial.
What do you think, Noor?
I mean, I don't know if this is exactly an answer to the question. In fact, I feel like it's not, but I feel like it's a way to, it's one approach, I guess we could say. And I think about spiritual bypassing, right? Or someone who says, I'm not afraid of death. I have thought about it plenty and I'm good. I'm not afraid. But there could be this sense in which it's all talk, and there hasn't really been that soul searching, making peace with the reality of death. And I'm using that as an example because I think it's a fairly common one where there can be a lot of machismo or whatever, or spiritualizing built up around the idea of acceptance and facing things head on. But is that real or is that just fantasy?
And the answer is nobody knows.
Yeah.
My philosophy professor, his first major work, which he considered his master work, I considered New Image of the Person to be more important, but he thought his most important book was called The Vitality of Death,
Mm.
Essays on Mortality. And it was brilliant too. It was designed to make people uncomfortable.
Right. Well, I think that's one of the ways in which we can approach these things productively, is that we use the tools we have to keep us grounded and not comfortable, but having a sense of how can I put this differently? We, to some extent, are going to benefit from going to the places that are uncomfortable. How do we find ways to do that that don't cause us to go into a spiral off into anxiety of the machine? That's one thing we have to think about, which is why practices that like breath work and bracketing is the idea of kind of taking yourself out of the picture and just observing. We talk about self-observation as a practice where, let's say you said something mean to somebody and you reflect on that in a way that allows you to learn from the situation, figure out what next steps would be appropriate without clobbering yourself over the head with your terrible actions that you just committed and you should be sorry about forever and ever. How can you learn from that experience in a productive way and move forward from that? Yes. So Khalil says you need to create a safe button. And I think that is true to some extent. How can you create a safe button without completely cutting yourself off from the sensations of discomfort that will allow you to learn where those uncomfortable places are and to see what you might learn from them? So this is a challenge for us as well.
So this is about what I wanted to ask is, like, I think this is the case with most of the kids as well, where probably at the back of the mind they're thinking what's happening to them. They don't know what to do about it. And they just go into the spiral of the material world. They just deny these existential questions, and they just go along with the crowd. And until something very fatal happens, they do not wake up to these existential questions again. So, is there anything we can do to actually enlighten children as well about addressing these kind of existential questions?
I'm sorry, Bonnie. Can you just repeat your question?
Sure.
Yeah, we can barely hear you.
I was able to read the captions on what you were saying about children and dealing with existential questions. Would you just repeat your question and maybe I don't know if you need to be a little bit closer to your microphone, perhaps?
Sure. Is that better?
It's a little better, yes.
Okay. What I was getting at is when children have these questions at the back of their mind and it causes them anxiety because they don't know what to do with it. And then they follow the crowd or, they just completely deny the fact that they have this sort of an anxiety. And until something bad happens or dangerous happens, they do not wake up to these questions. And once they do, they just go back to the spiral that, okay, yes, I used to have these questions when I was a kid and I don't know what went wrong. So, is there any way we can actually enlighten kids as well about these existential anxieties that they may face?
Well, I remember one time, I think I was in fourth grade, so I was maybe like 9, 10, and we had to do these little autobiographies. And one of, I always had to be extra, I guess we could say, as a kid. So we had to answer the question of what we were afraid of, and I wrote that I was afraid of death. And I laugh now, but at the time it caused this big like hullabaloo where the school guidance counselor got involved and we had this big existential conversation about like life after death, if any, and it was quite deep. And at the end of it, I felt calmer because I had been given space to talk through those things. And at the same time, it was kind of like high drama, which is sometimes stressful for a kid. But I think I just needed reassurance that the questions were okay and that it certainly helps to have someone available to talk through those things with.
I agree. I actually get it. Talking to children really helps.
Sorry, what was that, Bonnie? You're gonna have to be closer to the mic again.
Oh, sorry. I absolutely agree to that. Talking to children may help with these kind of things.
Yeah. And I think that I think there are playful ways to initiate conversations about these topics, but it really depends on the child, and that would go a lot deeper than we have time for in this discussion. But I think just creating an environment in which those questions are okay is an important beginning.
All right. Great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's very interesting the concept of denial of, let's say in this topic, anxiety, because if you ask me, even if you ask me this morning, or you ask me yesterday or whatever, 2 weeks ago or something like that, hey, are you an anxious person? I probably would have answered no to that question based off the fact of, or based off the knowledge or the assumption that I have of anxiety, just as a label itself, as what the image of anxiety is and what I think of it to be. Here, and hearing you share your insight in response to Khalid's comments of anxiety may manifest differently in different people, and being able to see how this manifestation takes place by seeing what how it manifests in one person, not just, oh, I'm anxious and oh, I'm seeing it at this manifestation, but actually internally, what's the dynamic that's happening, that I can now use that as a reflection, as a mirror that is going to reflect something within me. It's like, oh, wait a second, I do experience something like that. Oh, wait a second, I do feel something like that. And then the denial aspect, it just automatically starts to, now, yeah, one can be like, no, that's not, it's definitely not what it is. But taking the borders of definition of what it is might loosen the acceptance of the experience, rather than that wearing the garment of the definition and the borders of anxiety.
Right.
So that was very, very helpful for me.
I'm happy to hear that, Osama. And that reminds me again that the anxieties that we're talking about are nothing to be so self-judgmental about. In fact, anxiety about anxiety is a thing. And that is definitely belonging to the anxiety of the machine, but it is just kind of a way that we start beating ourselves up for having these really, really human questions about existence, about who we are, what all this is. And those things come up, and we somehow get the impression that there's something wrong with us for feeling those things. And then suddenly we're labeling ourselves as neurotic and insecure and unable to focus and all of those things and more, because as you said, this manifests in so many different ways in people. And how can we, this has been a struggle for me, is how do we take the charge out of this idea of anxiety?
One of the most important things that helps with that is to realize that all anxiety is revelatory. The anxiety of the machine will tell you where you need to do your work on the machine.
That's what I was getting at. Thank you, Mushtaq. Yeah.
The anxiety of essence will point you to what is important to you in essence. And you have to be awake to both of these things.
Yawn.
Arr.
Yeah. So I love what you said about it being it is a revelatory process. And that's really what anxiety comes down to when it is given its due.
Yeah, anxiety will point you towards the truth. And that is going to be the major thrust of the topic next week. Now that we know about this, what the heck can we do about it?
Mm.
Let's be a little practical as well as philosophical. Not that philosophy isn't practical.
Yeah. So do we have any other thoughts or questions? Who have
Brian,
not we
you've been
heard
so
from?
quiet.
Brian, so good to see you.
What's up, y'all? Yeah, I found myself thinking about the role of imagination and our um, uh, machine anxieties, and how a lot of times they're whatever we're worried about or have anxiety about, like it's completely out of my control anyway. And I try to remember that if it's what Yusuf had mentioned about a cause maybe being in the future, and it's just all kind of negative imagination. And then whenever I notice that, I try to bring the awareness to the body. But I catch myself all the time with just anxiety about something out of my control or that I'm just completely imagining.
Yeah, like the fantasy experience of like something from the past, something from the future. It's not necessarily a positive fantasy, right? But it's as if real and reacting to that. Yeah.
Yeah. But good talk. Thanks.
Thank you, Brian.
Now, I'm going to switch this over to Brady.
Brady Bunch mode. Yeah. This was, I think, the beginning. I mean, this was a good chat in my opinion, and I think that
Yeah. And you all had really good thoughts, questions,
yeah.
and answers, which is what I love about this group.
Mm-hmm. So thank you very much for that. And I know that I'm looking forward to continuing this conversation next week.
Me too.
Yay.
So
All right.
we should wrap this up.
Okay. So we can, as always, wave to each other, wave to everybody watching on the replay, and please tune in next week for the continuation of this discussion about anxiety and the work. See you then.
And like, comment, subscribe. Send us all your money.
Donate, yes. All right. Bye.
Talk to you soon. Bye.